There are signs the federal election is becoming more of a race. Numerous polls showing the gap between the Liberals and Conservatives is narrowing. CTV News pollster Nik Nanos of Nanos Research joins us. Nick, what, 10-point lead for the Liberals a week ago? That is now closed to a 5-point advantage over the Conservatives?
Absolutely. What we've seen is a narrowing of the race. Last week, with the focus on Trump tariffs Liberation Day, the Liberals and Mark Carney were up. This week, with the focus on jobs, the economy, taxes, the rising cost of living, the gap is narrowing between the Conservatives and the Liberals.
Where are the Conservatives making inroads? Is there a particular part of the country? Is there a particular demographic? Or is it spread evenly?
Well, actually, the Conservatives are making inroads among middle-aged voters, which is critical. You know, prior, when the Liberals had the big lead, they were ahead among voters that were over 35 years of age. Now, basically, the Conservatives and the Liberals are very close when it comes to middle-aged voters. Older voters voting Liberal, younger voters more likely to vote Conservative. So, you know, that's probably why this whole cost of living, focus on jobs and the economy message from Pierre Poilievre as one of the key things in the campaign has helped him buoy up his numbers and close the gap with Carney.
What's the picture you're seeing shape up in this part of the country, in the Maritimes?
Well, what once was going to be a Liberal wipeout in December is now the Liberals are back in the game. You know, we have in Atlantic Canada, the Liberals at 52% support, followed by the Conservatives at 40%, the NDP at 8%. So, you know, we're seeing a real dogfight in Atlantic Canada between the Conservatives and the Liberals, with the Liberals doing well in the cities, the Conservatives still doing well in rural parts of the Maritimes and Atlantic Canada. But it's going to be interesting. This ain't over, because you know what, Todd? 1 out of every 5 voters say they're going to make their final decision in the last 72 hours. So we look at these numbers, they can change again. People are going to wait for the debates. They're going to wait for the policy platforms. They'll wait to get together with their families over the holiday weekend to chit-chat about politics, and then they'll render their judgment.
Well, that's a very good point, right? I mean, I think we've talked about this in past weeks. This could be the election, and I'm thinking back now to Brian Mulroney and John Turner, and I can't think of a debate that could be so consequential in the years in between as those two.
Yeah, I think I'd watch out for a debate where someone messes up. I think it's going to be hard. These debates are hard to win. You really need to score like a knockout punch to win a debate. However, it is much easier for someone to lose a debate. And I think, you know, for Carney, the French debate will be quite a pressure cooker for him, because, you know, the Liberals need to do well in the province of Quebec in order to win the election. If he does anything in the French debate, like he just has, I don't think he has to win it, he has to get through it. But if he does anything that kind of derails his Quebec fortunes, that'll be a massive game changer, because what happens is when the Liberals go down in Quebec, the Bloc go up. It's not the Conservatives, the Bloc go up. So that's going to be a real pressure cooker. And then for Ontario, for the English debate, that's all going to be critical. So watch for someone to make a mistake. That'll be the critical factor in those two debates.
In terms of preferred prime minister and those numbers, Carney still retains a sizable lead for looking at it there.
Yeah, he's still got a pretty comfortable lead, about 11 points or thereabouts. It was 20 last week. So Pierre Poilievre has kind of been narrowing the gap on that front. And, you know, the other key point, Todd, is that Carney is more popular than his party, and the Conservatives are more popular than Pierre Poilievre, which means that for the Liberal support, it's all centered around Carney and what he brings to the ticket. For the Conservative support, they're highly motivated. They want the Liberals out of power. They want change. They're okay with Pierre Poilievre, but they're really motivated by wanting the Liberals to be out of power.
And this truly is a two-horse race at this point. I mean, we're seeing the NDP with numbers really we haven't seen in years, that this, you know, bottom feeding.
Here's a little bit of a tidbit that I'm sure Jagmeet Singh, the New Democrats, don't want to hear. Last time the New Democrats were not an official party or didn't meet party status, 1993, 30 years ago. If these polling numbers hold up, it's possible that the NDP will struggle to maintain party status in this next election. People are firmly focused on the Liberals and the Conservatives. The NDP have suffered, the Green have suffered, the Bloc have suffered, all those other parties have suffered as Canadians focus on the two frontrunners.
Nick, there's been some recent public questioning about polling results. largely conservative supporters. We've seen some banners and these type of things at rallies. Candidates hate being asked about the polls, don't they?
Of course, polls are very inconvenient because it puts a spotlight on reality. But you know what? In this particular environment, the polls are showing that it's a horse race, right? I don't think it feels like there's one party that has a massive advantage over the other. I think it feels like people are clearly focused on the two frontrunners. They know that their vote is going to be important. They know that depending on who forms the government, it will have a significant impact on the future of the country. And people are engaged. And you know what, Todd? I think it's good for both of those party leaders and those parties to work to win, as opposed to thinking that they can cruise to victory.
Nick, when you do these nightly polling and you and your staff, speak to Canadians, can you gauge a sense of the level of engagement of voters? It just seems like, the campaign started with this big jolt. A lot of people, obviously, given what's happening in the U.S., were very interested, and then it seems to have abated somewhat. Am I wrong about that, or?
No, well, it hasn't abated. I'll tell you one of the more striking numbers. I'll call it the non-sexy striking number, if that actually works. Usually, when we're doing polling at this point in the campaign, the level of undecided is somewhere between 12 and 17%. In this election, it's half that.
Okay.
Right? It's like 8%, which is exceptionally low considering on how far away. People are engaged and they're forming opinions. I think we're going to have a higher than average voter turnout, but I don't know who that's going to benefit. I think both of the supporters for both parties are highly motivated, right? The Conservatives are highly motivated because they want the Liberals out. The Liberals are highly motivated because they like Mark Carney and they don't want the Conservatives to get in. So, in a traditional election, high voter turnout would be bad news for whoever the government was. I think it's going to be much more of a mixed bag this time because for the two frontrunners, their supporters are both motivated.
Okay, well, maybe they'll start wooing the undecided. Maybe that's what we'll start seeing in these coming weeks. Nik Nanos, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again.
You bet.
We'll take a break. We'll be back right after this.